And we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on preserving the 4.9 spectrum for public safety. My name is Martha Ellis, and I'm the Executive Director of the Public Safety Broadband Technology Association, or the PSBTA. As an association, our primary objective is to work as a broadband end user advocate for first responders and service providers. We've heard a lot over the years about FirstNet, but less familiar to folks is that in 2002, the FCC allocated 50 megahertz of the 4.9 gigahertz spectrum to public safety, which stands separate and apart from our nationwide public safety network. Over the past 2 years, that spectrum has been in jeopardy of being reallocated for commercial use. Because of that, the PSBTA, has sponsored the Public Safety Spectrum Alliance, or the PSSA, to fight on your behalf, to keep that spectrum for public safety use only. As the efforts progress, we'd like to keep everyone up to speed on current developments regarding the public safety's 4.9 spectrum. The work that we've done demonstrates how critical it is for first responders to stay informed and, when needed, engage in standing up for those precious resources. Before we get started, I have a couple housekeeping items I need to go over. All attendees have automatically been muted to reduce background noise. Any questions should be submitted directly to us through the questions function, which is located at the bottom of the menu on the right side of your screen. Questions will be answered at the end of our panel discussion. Please keep your questions short and concise. We will attempt to answer as many questions as possible and follow up with those that we don't get to during the live portion of this webinar. An email address will also be provided in the chat pane, so if you have additional questions after we conclude today, you can feel free to email those to us directly. We have also included a link to the FCC site where you can make comments in support of our efforts to preserve this valuable spectrum for first responders. Please make sure that you grab the link and the emails prior to the end of the webinar. What we'd like to do today is clarify the significance of the proposed changes to the 4.9 spectrum and how the PSSA is taking a stand against those changes. We'll also broaden the understanding of why the 4.9 spectrum is so significant to the first responder. Joining us today are two of our PSSA members, retired Fire Chief, former FirstNet Vice Board Chair, Jeff Johnson, and Sue Swenson, former FirstNet Board Chair. Welcome to both of you, and thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you.
As I turn the time over to both of you, if you wouldn't mind just taking a moment to briefly introduce yourselves and speak to your interest on spectrum preservation for first responders. And with that, I'm going to turn the time over to you, Chief Johnson, to get us started with our webinar, Status Briefing, PSSA's ongoing efforts to secure 4.9 gigahertz spectrum for public safety.
Well, thank you, Martha. It's a pleasure. And I could actually call you Division Chief, Martha, since that's how you made your living for most of your career. It's a pleasure to have you hosting today. As you mentioned, I'm Jeff Johnson. I am a retired fire chief. I spent 32 years spraying water, chopping holes, and shocking people, running Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, one of the 100 largest agencies in the country. And I did that job as the fire chief for 15 years and then got involved in technology and public safety communications. And then was active with a handful of other people, asking Congress to make sure that public safety had an LTE network to support our broadband data needs. And we know that effort as the D-Block originally, and then we know that as FirstNet today. I was fortunate enough to meet Chairwoman Sue Swenson, who's on the call with me today. I served as her vice chairman. We saw FirstNet from its first scrap of paper to a fully operable network. We're proud of what we've done for public safety, and we invest plenty of time to make sure that we protect public safety's interests. And remember, my context is I got in this profession in 1978, and at no point until we had FirstNet did we have technology that was superior to that of what your typical citizen had. And that was shameful, especially with the advent of LTE devices. We were still using push-to-talk technology, and every 14-year-old in the country had smartphones. And we hadn't evolved to it. There was no ecosystem to evolve around, and we needed to execute on it. And I don't think we need to spend any time talking about whether it was successful or not. FirstNet has been on the street about 6 years, and we're approaching 5 million users in 6 years. And I think you're beyond being able to make the argument that public safety didn't need it, didn't want it, because they've adopted it aggressively. So I look forward to the conversation today, Martha.
So Jeff, do you want me to go ahead and do a little intro now,
Yeah,
and then you
please, if you would, Sue, and then we'll bail into whatever it is we want to talk about.
Yeah, it'll be quick. I think, you know, obviously most of my career in telecommunications, both wired and wireless, and then of course met you in 2012, you know, with FirstNet. And so I've become not only a person from the wireless community, but a public safety advocate is the way I'd characterize it. So with that, I'll turn it back to you.
An outright adoptee. You earned your stripes.
Right.
Well, Martha, if you don't mind, let me just kind of take off on why 4.9 and why it's important to us. And I think you mentioned it in your opening remarks. In 2002, Congress, not an agency, but Congress gave 50 megahertz of 4.9 spectrum to public safety. And they did that because they knew we had future communication needs that needed to be addressed. And in fact, we were awarded it and had it. And we didn't do much with it. We did some point-to-point communications. We did, you know, there were regional licenses offered. There were uses for it, but it wasn't like a high-speed rapid adoption like FirstNet has been. And part of the reason for that is we had envisioned that 4.9 spectrum would be the perfect mid-band spectrum for 5G if we should ever get there. And then after the launch of FirstNet, under the last administration, 4.9 spectrum was taken from public safety. Remember, it was public safety spectrum. It was taken from us, led in large part by industry group, and they were going to use it for industry purposes. And we fought to get it back. So many of us met for the first time. Some of us known each other a long time and improving public safety communications, but we knew that it was in public safety's best interest that we preserve 4.9 spectrum for 5G spectrum for ongoing evolving needs of public safety. So what we're talking about today is we're talking about the governmental process wherein public safety preserves our spectrum and what process we go about to put it in play. We've got, there are processes. And for those people that don't live and breathe spectrum and technology, spectrum is simply, from a physics perspective, they're invisible lines or lanes, traffic lanes through the sky on which communications travels. So these are allotted through a regulatory process governed by the FCC. So these lanes are essential. You have to have a ticket to ride on those lanes, and it's very valuable. And I'm hoping that maybe Sue will kind of comment, since she has been the COO or CEO of about every wireless company in this country. I think it'd be best for her to speak about how industry sees it, but how public safety sees it is we need these lanes to drive public safety communications on. And it isn't just about 4G or 5G. There'll be a 6, 7, and 8G as public safety evolves and we have further demands. One of the odd things that's happened is public safety, once you get a reliable network like FirstNet, guaranteed reliability like FirstNet, now you start to watch the ecosystem evolve around it. You watch devices, there's like nearly 500 devices now built for FirstNet with FirstNet chips. You see the devices evolve around it. You see applications evolve around it. You see uses revolve around it. And what you see is you see map books come out of fire trucks and they're replaced with digital maps. Why? Because you can reliably count on it. You see access to important databases come out of books in the fire engine and they go straight to the records management system. And that's what we're seeing. And that's driving a lot of the use for higher spectrum needs. And Sue, maybe, I think I've kind of talked about how public safety sees the need for communication spectrum, but you came out of industry before you came to public safety. I mean, how does industry see it? And why in the world does industry have so much energy on public safety spectrum? And then I'll turn it back to Martha for a question.
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, thanks to all the participants today on the webinar. We appreciate your interest in this topic. this, spectrum, is a topic that, unless you deal with it every day, it's a little bit mysterious, but it's pretty simple. And Jeff, to your question about how does industry view it, is more is better. It's very simple, more is better. And I guess if there was a dearth of spectrum, certainly there's been a lot of spectrum auctions in the last number of years. And if you look at the holdings that people have, there's a lot of spectrum in use today. And as you know, both NTIA, who's kind of responsible for spectrum policy, and the FCC are looking to find ways to free up more spectrum. So there's a continuing movement towards that, but I think industry would always want more. I worked for somebody one time that said, you never have enough spectrum. So it's just, it's something that, at some point there's, who knows when that time's going to be, but it's not like there's a large amount of it and you want to get your hands on as much as you can. But I guess the view that I have, Jeff, having come from industry and then joining the FirstNet Authority Board, is that I was, as you said, a little bit shocked actually at how far behind public safety was technologically. Almost embarrassed in a way from an industry person's perspective to say, wow, you're out here building capacity for whatever game playing and all that sort of stuff, and yet we expect public safety to be there, in times of need, and yet they didn't have the tools that they needed. So I guess my view is on this is that it's not like we're asking for 100 megahertz exclusively. I think the nationwide public safety broadband network has shown that you can provide the priority and preemption that public safety needs. They need reliability of that network, and yet have the opportunity to have others use it. So I think, we've proven that we can do that. We have the technology to do that today. And so to not have that available for public safety, to me, seems really inappropriate. So, we've been working, as you said, for the last couple of years to make sure that what was given to public safety in 2002 stays with public safety. If we hadn't had the success of FirstNet, then I think there could be a better argument about, well, you need to split it and do all kinds of things with it. But I think we can show that we can live together, but we can give public safety the priority it deserves. So I think if we hadn't had 6 years of success, this would be a much different discussion that we're having today. But the goal of the FCC, as you know, in the ninth order, is just to create a consistent, and I think really important point, nationwide framework for the 4.9 gigahertz band, because they want to foster efficient use of the spectrum. And honestly, you and I and the PSSA and everybody who's involved in this couldn't agree more with that statement. So I think that's important that we keep that in mind about what we're trying to do. And I think, I want to go over the positions that we're taking and why we're doing it, so people understand that we understand that there's an opportunity here for public safety to never be behind technologically again. And I want to make sure that that people understand. I don't think why are we going backwards when we've shown that there's a better way to do it? And I think we owe it to public safety. So as Jeff said, and Martha said, the public safety was granted this 50 megahertz in 2002, and it's used in a variety of ways across the US. And I want to make sure at the beginning of this, you understand we want to protect the incumbents. And Jeff, we did that when we were at FirstNet. We did that. We protected them, and got them equal or better situation out of that whole thing. And we think the same tenet applies here. And then just a couple of other things, Jeff, in terms of the success of I kind of think back and, we kind of say, wow, FirstNet's been a success. You and I both know that we weren't sure it was going to work. Let's be honest, right? We went out for 2 years, and you were the leader of that, went out and talked to public safety, local and state people, and said, what do you need? And that's what created the RFP. And as a result of that, we created something that we thought would work, but you don't know until you try it. So obviously that success, I'm sure, is leading to, what our position is today. But I think in addition to what you've said about the devices, and actually there's almost 600, Jeff, devices with Band 14, that would not have happened without a nationwide framework and an ecosystem that would support it. In addition, the NPSBN also has about 150 dedicated assets to assist with emergencies. So whether it's cell on wheels or flying cell on wheels or compact rapid deployables or whatever, there's a whole fleet of assets that help public safety in times of need. And as important as the asset, Jeff, because you can have the asset, but if you can't get it there in time, doesn't
Yeah.
really. I think and with your good help and your experience in the fire service, I think the FirstNet organization has been able to allocate those resources in a way that can get to public safety quickly, which I think is obviously very important. And then lastly, which doesn't get talked about very much, but you know this better than I, FirstNet has adopted a kind of a therapy dog program. And I think there's about 30 therapy dogs that are in use today. And, you know, I don't think we think about the trauma that can exist when you're, you know, on the fire line for a month sometimes, you know, those fires in California or a particular incident. So that program has been, I think, particularly successful. And I know you've been doing a lot more work in that area around, you know, the health of the public safety folks, the professionals who are out there. So it's a very comprehensive program. It's not just a marketing plan that says, you know, we'll give it to you for free or we'll give it to you at this rate. It's very comprehensive. And I think that really speaks to why it's been so successful, because it is a complete strategy and a complete organization, you know, that actually supports public safety. But I think it's only been possible because of this nationwide framework, you know, in the 700 megahertz. So the analysis that the FCC has done in the proceedings, and we're now getting ready to do reply comments. There's several of the details that they've proposed and they've asked for comment. If implemented in the manner that they suggest, we don't think they're going to accomplish the commission's and public safety's goals effectively. So I'd like to just hit on a couple of points, if I could, to talk about 5 key points that we're taking, which I think are important. And I think you touched on, Jeff, a little bit. So rather than continuing the local licensing, which again, it creates a real fragmented kind of approach, which we had before FirstNet, we think that the commission should issue a single nationwide overlay license to an entity that, you know, has the expertise necessary to deliver services to first responders. So that's one point. We think that's really important. And again, a lot of this is based on our experience with the nationwide broadband network. So that way we can get full use of the spectrum by first responders, but it also can incentivize innovation, which we are big supporters of. So it's not just for public safety, but how do you incentivize innovation? And then I also think, you know, providing oversight for dispute resolution is going to be really important, because that's going to be an issue that has to be dealt with. So the second point, Jeff, is that we want a band manager to be selected to work in conjunction with the nationwide licensee. So there's lots of, you know, comments in the filing right now, you know, that people are talking about appointing, and, you know, it looks very complicated. When I read it, Jeff, to be honest with you, I said, gosh, what year is that going to actually get done when you go through all those processes? So we think that the band manager should be selected. So we support a band manager, but we think it should be selected. The new framework should also require one, and you guys won't be surprised about this, one single nationwide core dedicated to public safety, or a similar approach. And the reason we say that is that having that allows for automatic application of priority and preemption. We cannot have any delay. As you know, there's technology, Jeff, that's evolving today, and it looks very promising, but it's not there yet. Right. And public safety can't wait for that to happen. I mean, it has to happen automatically, which it does today. So this will avoid, you know, the manual intervention and non-interference kinds of things that happen on some of the other spectrum that is used that way. But we think it has to be in a more automatic format. We also believe that the 4.9 band must be fully operable with a nationwide networking, including this application of priority and preemption across the band and band 14, so that we can ensure seamless and automated public safety priority. So that's really a key point. And the last point, and again, these are just the key elements that we think are really important, is that, and I mentioned it before, we want to protect the incumbent licensees. However they're using it today, but we would like that to be converted to site-specific authorizations. And so, and that way it's limited for those uses, but through the band manager and the nationwide licensee, we want there to be an opportunity to grant expanded operational capability. So it's a way to do that, to make sure that's done in the right way. So again, a key tenet of our proposal is that the incumbents get get protected. So, you know, it's a fairly simple approach, and again, you know, there's lots of opportunity to make this work for both public safety and commercial interests. But I think we owe it as a country, we owe it to public safety to make sure that they evolve with technology just like commercial interests do. As you know, Jeff, more than anybody, technology, you know, happens at a breakneck speed, and we can't ever, if we can help it, let public safety, you know, get left behind again. So I think that's what this effort is all about, and it's really nothing more complicated than that. We're here to advocate for public safety. That is our interest, and you know, I would hope that by now, after what, 8 years, that that people would realize that public safety is our interest, and we're hoping that, you know, that the commission will see it that way as well. But that's really kind of where we are on a more kind of specific basis in terms of our position as PSSA. But with that, I don't know if you want me to turn it back to Martha and have her ask some questions, or if there's anything you'd like to add.
Yeah, Martha dropped me a note. She's got a question.
Okay.
I do have a question. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, if 4.9 is allocated to FirstNet as discussed in this presentation, will FirstNet allow shared use with commercial customers as capacity allows in the same case as with the D block?
Well, so let me take a run at that. I think the first fundament of how we structured FirstNet was it is in the interest of the United States of America and spectrum policy to get full utilization of spectrum. It's like owning a square mile of farmland and you just farm a corner of it. It's a bad idea. So what you want to do is you want to get full utilization, and the FirstNet model is built on, we get commercial use of the spectrum for FirstNet. That's used every day, all day by commercial users. People like our moms and dads and people across the street, there's commercial traffic on that spectrum. So that land is being used, but the use of that is invisible to the first responder. When we look at that land, there's not a person on it, because public safety automatically embedded in the technology, that field is empty every time we need it, but it's being used. And that is good spectrum policy for the United States of America. And that's necessary it's a finite resource. So why wouldn't we? If we have technology that can preempt people's use of it and it looks empty to me, then as a responder, then that's what we want. And our view isn't any different on 4.9. We want maximum utilization of the 4.9 spectrum, and whoever ends up with it, we would have a full expectation they find commercial uses for it. Here's the difference. I think the difference between those folks that see 180 degrees opposite of public safety, I think the difference is this. I think their view is industry should be licensed the spectrum, and they should charge us money to use it, and they'll set the terms by which we use it. Our view is the FirstNet model. It's our spectrum. Congress gave it to us. It's our spectrum. We'll build it for public safety. And whoever gets awarded this spectrum, their charge will be to figure out how to get maximum commercial use, but public safety always has priority and preemption. And we will govern our spectrum to make sure that public safety is taken care of and get commercial use. That's the difference. And part of that, listen, I'm tainted. I've been around doing this since 1978, and I put my trust in industry. And what that got us, prior to FirstNet, you know what that got us? That got us World War II push-to-talk technology in 2011. That's what it got us. Every 14-year-old in America had better technology than us. So you say, well, how did that happen? Well, listen, public safety exists for public safety's purpose. And until public safety said, enough of giving us the same old World War II quality stuff, enough of that. We have got to have something better for public safety. And remember, it was local public safety responders that pushed for and got Congress convinced to create FirstNet. No federal agency did it, no corporation did it, public safety did it. And that's because we finally got to a point where commercial grade services were not good enough and no one else was fighting for public safety. And that's when just regular old fire chiefs from Oregon and California and New York and Nevada and Virginia and across this country, we got together and we said, Congress needs to hear our story. That's the roots of FirstNet. And those conditions exist today. Our opinion hasn't changed. We've done a darn good job creating FirstNet and the public-private partnership and getting full utilization of that spectrum. And we have taken care of public safety, and about 5 million people agree with us. So 25,000 agencies. So I think we can put a stake in that question. The bottom line is, I just fundamentally believe you get maximum commercial utilization, but public safety always gets priority. The field looks empty to us. And if we do those things and we control our own future with our own spectrum, I think the nation's interests are served and so are public safety's. But let's not make industry bad here.
No.
We couldn't have done what we've done without industry. We need industry. We need their innovation. We need their resources. They are a business that can capitalize their investments, and we have to have that. The nuance is they just don't control it. They respond to it. They profit from it. They do what they do from it. We have to have both. It's just a different context of being controlled by it, or we use what they're good at and we use what we're good at. That's where we stand.
Hey, Jeff, and Martha, let me just add something. And Jeff, I'm glad you're not very passionate about this topic. So, the thing that's important about industry, and like I said, having been in industry, I'll be honest, I mean, we just never even really talked about public safety as a segment, or, you're just another, subscriber. So there was no real focus on the real needs of public safety, which are really important. I also think it's important to know that, as a commercial entity, you can make a decision anytime about any business that you're involved in. You can buy them, you can sell them, you can walk away from them, and because you have an obligation as a public company to support your shareholders. So I think the unique part about, the nationwide public safety broadband network, and you know this better than anybody, Jeff, because you talk about it all the time, is that what it meant was that somebody had to come in and basically sign up for a long-term commitment and have the oversight of the federal government, which is not an easy thing as a commercial entity to go, I'm used to having a lot more flexibility. And, there's a lot of, but I think it's important to understand that what public safety has today is a very unique situation with a commercial entity that not only obviously believes in this, but also is being held accountable. And so I think that's an important and unique thing that I think sometimes gets missed. And it's a big obligation. It was a really important decision, I think, for entities to say, boy, do I want to have oversight by the federal government. That's not an easy decision to make. And so I think people need to recognize, how significant that is and what it means to public safety, because as much as it's there for priority and preemption, Jeff, it's there for the long-term commitment. And that was an important consideration that we had as we developed the RFP and the contract, for this commitment to public safety. So I know it's something you generally talk about, but I thought I'd jump on your comments and just add to it. I'm just following your lead.
Oh, the passion's ramping here, folks. I love it.
Go ahead, Martha.
But true to form of what you're all saying is, before the advent of FirstNet, public safety had to bend to the will of what the commercial entities wanted to provide them. And their drivers were clearly 100% monetarily driven, right? I mean, the towers where the money was going up and down, that's where we had that's where, exactly. And so with that, with that change and getting FirstNet up and running, it just is a complete paradigm shift. And frankly, I think you're both right. I think it's been a huge benefit to all of the commercial entities. Look at how everybody's just upped their game, right? And biggest benefactor, of course, is the end user, whether they're public safety or the general population. We're just getting better coverage across the country in general. So anyway, great conversation. So I have another question about 4.9 use. Will it be able to be used for IoT, telematics, pure data for streaming, example, video, voice comms? And along with this, Jeff, maybe you'd like to talk a little bit about the in-building advantage of 4.9 for first responders.
So for the first, what will it be used for? The answer to all those things is yes. Next question. In building, I think 4.9 creates the opportunity for us to carve out an in-building strategy. Like, as a nation, public safety doesn't have a completely effective in-building strategy. Like, some parts of the building code and fire code require emergency communications, but that doesn't cover broadband. And I think we have a massive opportunity to resolve that. And with this spectrum, we have a chance to work our way through that. And the bottom line is that the problem with the building code strategy is the building code, the difference in the codes are, the fire code is a maintenance code. The fire official gets authority to enforce the code on a building once it has its certificate of occupancy. So the fire department is rarely involved other than access, sprinkler systems, et cetera. The building official has authority prior to that. And the only way you can build in requirements to the building code is on new buildings. The buildings that are there are pre-existing non-compliant, it's existing stock. So they're held to account on the code they were built under, not the new code. So the only way to really get ahead of that is we need a strategy. And industry will be key here. We will need their help. We need a strategy that is commercially viable, that creates reliable in-building coverage for public safety, because some of this mid-band and higher-end spectrum doesn't penetrate buildings well. And the building envelope, as we make it resistant to UV rays and make them more energy efficient, well, it's a lot of that behaves a lot like upper-end spectrum. And it makes terrestrial networks hard to get in a building. So this is going to create a really interesting opportunity. If I was in industry, I would be taking a look at that opportunity created by 4.9 and saying, wow, how do I help public safety solve an in-building problem with something that's scalable and commercially viable?
Yeah, Martha, I would just add to that that obviously the commercial world is looking at the use of 5G and continuing to look at what are the uses for it. And I think it's just like, and Jeff, you kind of mentioned this, but I don't think public safety even envisioned for a minute, with the exception of those who are pretty close to technology, what a broadband network could do. I mean, just that alone. So now that people are using it, they're coming up with all kinds of uses for it now that they understand what it can do for them. I think the same thing's going to happen, Martha, with 5G, just like it's happening in the commercial world. I think as people start to see its capability, you're going to see more and more use of it. And that's frankly one of the reasons why the FirstNet Authority has the PSAC, which some people may not realize is, I think there's like, 40 some plus members on there that represent all facets of public safety, so that information can then be fed to the authority, and then obviously to AT&T, who actually then delivers that capability. But it's really important to understand that whole organization is built around giving public safety the voice to get what they need. And it continues to exist, and I think becomes increasingly important. And so I think, Martha, there will be many, many uses for 5G yet to be discovered, and that'll be up, frankly, to public safety. How do they want to use it? But they got to have that capability to even have the discussion.
Right, and as those problems arise and we all look for the solutions might very much lie right there in that 4.9 spectrum. So, so you mentioned the incumbent user, and we did just get another question in about that. So I'm just going to read this to you just so we can reiterate and put people's mind at ease. If 4.9 spectrum is allocated to FirstNet, will current users of 4.9 spectrum who are not FirstNet customers be allowed to continue the use of the spectrum? So how does that protection work? Do you know?
Well, I don't know exactly how it's going to work, just like we didn't know exactly how it was going to work on 700, but that's one of the important things that we want to make sure that gets done. So the details will obviously be worked out, but that's one of the things that we want to make sure that current public safety users get protected in whatever way that takes. And that's why, you know, you have a nationwide framework, but then you have a band manager who helps with that, and that you'll have to figure out what that is. I mean, there's lots of devils in the details, and I don't know every user and, you know, kind of what their situation is, but they can be assured that they will be protected in terms of their use of this spectrum.
Yeah, because that is one of our primary tenets of our recommendations. So I just wanted to put that out there again. So Chief Johnson, it seems like there's an assortment of business interests that are weighing in on alternative use of the spectrum. Why does business have an opinion on public safety spectrum?
Well, I think it's varied to start with. I think there's not one category, but in general, I think Sue touched on it. Spectrum is very valuable and there's a limited supply of it. So if industry can get access to it and create a model whereby they create a business model around whereby they get the spectrum and then they resell it back to public safety, you know, that may work for their, you know, their vision of how it goes. I'm not saying that public safety has a crazy different view of how to do that. You have to pay for it somehow, but it's all about who controls it. So it's our spectrum. We believe public safety should control their spectrum, and we believe that industry should give public safety a proposal on how to use it secondarily for commercial purposes and protect public safety's existing users and take this thing and make it work in the context that we're talking about. But, you know, the fact is somebody, just back up a little bit. Businesses have an obligation to their shareholders. That's it. They don't have a higher purpose that other than that. Now they can parrot, your obligation is to your shareholders. That's what it is. And if you can pair that obligation to your shareholders with doing good, then that's all the more beneficial. You know, there's actually ratings on certain companies. There's ESG ratings, you know, how people perform on certain parameters around environment, societal governance, et cetera. And companies can be right-minded, but they still have an obligation to their shareholders. So one has to assume that if industry, or frankly, industry associations, if they're advocating for a position, there's probably a business case behind it, one way or another. And we just see it for what it is. It's just different than the public safety position. We are public safety, and we advocate that public safety controls their spectrum, and that we pair with business that helps us achieve our goals. It's very different. I was reading an industry blog from after last week's webinar, and essentially they were saying in this blog that public safety is wolf in sheep's clothing, and we're not. What we are is the sheepdog. Our job is to protect public safety's assets and our functional capabilities on the emergency scene, and we've proven we can do it. We have undone this fractured piece by piece. Every time you hear in a new city or a county, you got to have a different radio and a different spectrum. We proved that the business model behind how public safety can make that go away, that it works. We are protecting public safety's interests here. Well, you know, public safety is not the financial sector. You will not see us giving quarterly updates to our investor community. We're not the transportation sector. We're just straight up the public safety sector. We have a different mindset, and you can partner with people. You know, this question of band management comes up. There are excellent examples of band managers out there with a proven track record. Just to pick one, APCO. APCO, the Association of Public Communication Officials, they're a trade association, a public safety trade association. They have a long history in band management. They're the perfect example of somebody that would be a good idea to have do band management on behalf of whoever has the responsibility for this spectrum. there are these kinds of association and public safety and industry partnerships that you bring together. No one of them's bad. You need all three. It's really just a debate over who controls public safety spectrum, who controls its functionality, and who gets to hold people accountable. It's fair to say, if you don't have a contract for performance and you're a company operating in public safety, you can wake up tomorrow, go to the board of directors, and they can say, we're not in this space anymore. And then where are we? You have to be constrained contractually, because that's the tie between the shareholder and the public safety performance right there, a contract. And that's why we're so passionate about, the FirstNet-like model, is because we have a 25-year contract that holds a major corporation that won the bid. We hold them responsible, hold their feet to the fire. They can't wake up tomorrow and say they're out. They can't wake up tomorrow and underperform, not without severe consequences. So I think you generally see us arguing for that model because it has accountability. Public safety is in control of their spectrum and their outcomes. And I think public safety has proven ourselves pretty darn capable at doing what nobody had done before anywhere in the world. We got it done. So,
and it's working, right?
Yes, people shouldn't be surprised that we say, yeah, we kind of like that. It worked.
Yeah, right, exactly. So can we shift gears for just a minute? I want to talk a little bit about devices. And you can, I would like you to speak a little bit about what your experiences were prior to FirstNet and the industry, or the general attitude about what the industry was going to do as far as innovation and devices, and then apply that to what we might see happen if the 4.9 gets put into this framework that we're proposing.
Jeff, you want to take it because you started that discussion with a particular company, because I think there was a lot of skepticism about, is anybody going to build a device that's going to support this? So why don't you start it and I can add any color.
Well, thank you. The first thing is you need scale. You know, it's like I can't go to the auto industry and say I need a 5-tired truck and expect anybody's going to go build it. I need every fire department in America to say I need a 5-tired truck, and then someone will build it. So the first thing you have to do when you talk about devices is you have to bring nationwide scale to the solution. And that requires a nationwide license and a nationwide approach before the industry will say, I'll invest our investors' money in building devices for public safety, because I know there's actually a viable market there. You can't do it. You can't say Cincinnati's doing it blue and Miami's doing it orange and LA's doing it pink and expect that you're ever going to get reasonable pricing on devices, because everybody's different. So you have to bring scale to it, and you have to do it in a way that solves public safety's needs. Sue?
Yeah, if you look around in terms of what's provided today for 4.9, it's kind of hard to find it. I think to Jeff's point, I mean, we've actually done some looking around and tried to call people, and because of the fragmentation, I think it's pretty limited. And when we did, and to be fair, I mean, it was an appropriate concern when we were doing FirstNet. People said, well, who's going to build devices for this? And I think we've shown that with that scale, it can be done. I don't see it any different. We've not received any feedback from anybody voicing a concern, because they've seen that it works as long as there's scale and opportunity to do it. And think of all the bands that are in devices today. Adding a band, as long as there's opportunity is not an issue for device makers, at least that I've heard. So I don't think that's an issue.
Yeah, and I believe, to your points, the nationwide framework is where that reliability and consistency and continuity lies, so that it brings that extra layer of confidence for the hardware developers, right, or for the device developers, right? So big contrast from having a patchwork quilt to having something super reliable. And again, the proof is in the pudding, because we certainly have realized that in droves with FirstNet. So
Martha, let's not forget, not only are the devices available, they're available at much more affordable prices. You know, we always seem to forget that part because before devices were thousands of dollars, you know, for public safety. And look, what I learned from Chief Johnson is they will pay money because they need something that works. But why not give them something that works at a more affordable price? You know, and so we sometimes forget about the pricing stuff, right, Chief?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Well,
And
yeah,
Martha,
pricing, go ahead.
on this, I have a closing comment when we have time.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to ask you one more question, Chief, and it's just kind of to put a bow around the whole notion of why we're doing this in the first place. I know we've talked about it, but you know, some of the opposing comments out there, something like, let's just leave it the way it was. And I just need you to explain just one more time, why is it that we can't just leave it the way it is? You know, can we just remind everybody why we're even in this 4.9 conversation to begin with?
Well, I mean, we can't leave it the way it was. We couldn't leave it the way it was in 2008 when we went to Capitol Hill and asked for authority to build FirstNet, because if you leave it the way it was, we just go backwards. Technology moves at such a rapid pace, and so do our needs. The thirst that occurs in your typical patrol car for data speeds, your typical fire engine, any responder, EMS agency, we just can't be stuck in the past. So we have to evolve, and to evolve, you need faster speeds. Faster speeds require mid and upper band spectrum, and we have to do so, frankly, under public safety's control, or we end up a victim of the circumstance again. And I think we learned our lesson. We have to have our own, control our own, but we need industry as a partner because they're the ones that can bring it.
And as a reminder, I just want to remind everybody that the trigger, we didn't just make this up. The trigger was that it was being taken away. And so we had to respond, right? So that was the initial response, is to put a stay on that and then work from there. So it's just one of those things. Had the sheepdogs not been watching what was going on, we could have lost that very easily. Sue, did you have something to add?
Well, I just want to, you know, the fire service is full of history and lore, right? I mean, the fire service is kind of like baseball. There's as much history as there is science to it, right? And one of the things the fire service is very good about is remembering our own. And that's why I can tell you today that the father of the fire service was Ben Franklin. And I gotta say, we lost Andy Siebold this week, who is the father of technology for the Public Safety Alliance, who worked on Capitol Hill. He was our expert, and we lost Andy. And just a shout out to Andy.
Yeah, amen. I second that.
Hey, Martha, can I just make one last comment? You talked about it being taken away from us. You know me well enough by now that I always tend to try to make lemonades out of lemon.
Sure.
And so, you know, in a way, I think, you know, we had this spectrum that was laying fallow for so long from 2002. I think this actually is good that we're having to go through this process, because it's really causing us to take a look at this and make sure we do the right thing with it. So I actually think out of this is going to come a better outcome. And I think the debate is healthy. And I think we'll come out with a position that will work hopefully for everybody. So anyway, I just, you know, I tend to be an optimist.
No, I 100% agree. And ultimately, Sue, the desired outcome from the FCC was to see better utilization of the spectrum, right? And you're absolutely right, because this jumpstart and this conversation and where it's led, I think they're going to be very impressed if we prevail, what happens and where we go with 4.9 for sure. Chief Johnson, did you have some closing comments? We're getting close to the end.
Yeah, I want to thank the public safety community and the trade associations that are supporting our initiative. We can't move this ball down the field without their support and assistance. And each and every fire chief that signs our petition, every association that signs our petition, it's helpful. And I'd just like to thank Sue and all the people around us that make up the PSSA for being tireless and not giving up on public safety's needs.
Happy to do it.
Thank you.
Sue, did you have any closing comments that you would like to add, or ready
No,
to
just
go?
encourage, anybody who's interested, just, sign in and file in support of what we're trying to do here. Hopefully you better understand why we're doing it, and what our motivation is. And it's strictly public safety. Like I said, I was shocked in 2012. I don't want to be on this earth and seeing public safety go backwards. This is an opportunity for public safety to stay the course on technology. And I think we owe it as a country, honestly, to public safety to do it. So those are my comments.
Fabulous, thank you. And just as a reminder, before we close the webinar, you can get the link to that FCC site where you can make comment in the chat pane, which is on the right side of your screen under the GoToWebinar control panel. We realize that first responders have a lot on their minds, and worrying about expanding needs of the broadband spectrum should not be a point of concern for you all. That is why the Public Safety Spectrum Alliance is working so hard on your behalf, in addition to PSBTA. We hope that you enjoyed the webinar today and felt that it was time well spent. And again, we are the Public Safety Broadband Technology Association, and we want to be your advocate for all aspects of broadband utilization. By being here today, you help support our efforts to continually bring you cutting-edge information about the current and developing matters specific to your broadband interests. Please take a moment to lend your support to the 4.9 spectrum preservation effort through the provided link to the FCC. If you have any additional questions on the topic today or anything else that has to do with the PSBTA, please email us at info@thepsbta.org. And for more information on the PSBTA in general, please visit our website at thepsbta.org. This concludes our webinar, Status Briefing PSSA Ongoing Efforts to Secure the 4.9 GHz Spectrum for Public Safety. Thank you again for your time.